Hi, I'm Superman, and I'm a Final Fantasy. Oh, what's wrong, buddy? It's just, is anyone gonna get this reference in 2024? What? Come on. People went crazy for the Just Some Random Guy cameo in my most recent death battle. No, I mean the whole Mac versus PC thing. The what? And why do we sound so similar anyway? The whole thing is freaking confusing. Well, we've shared the same actors twice already, so why shouldn't it be the same for the opening skit? Oh, we have we? That gives me an idea. Maybe I should invade your world next. Oh, I wouldn't try that, old chum. And why not? After I'm through with you, the S will stand for Sephiroth. Daniel, what are you doing? Making an opening skit for our video? Hey everybody, Daniel here. You know, it seems that once more my interests have intersected. With Final Fantasy VII Rebirth having just released, it's gotten me thinking about one of my favorite villains of all time, Sephiroth, and his relationship to Superman. For those of you who don't know, both Superman and Sephiroth have shared actors twice. George Newborn, who voiced Superman in various projects, especially in the DCAU, a personal favorite of mine, and Sephiroth in Advent Children and the original Crisis Core. And then you have Tony Hoagland, who is currently rocking it as Big Blue in Superman and Lois coming up on its final season. And he has taken the reins as Sephiroth in the remake project. Yes, it seems that both of these icons are being kept alive in the public zeitgeist with reboots and remakes, and I honestly just can't get enough of it. And you know, all of this has really gotten me thinking. Sephiroth is pretty much tailor-made to be a Superman villain. No, really, think about it. Spoilers incoming for two of the biggest nerd icons that I know of. Superman is an alien refugee from the planet Krypton. On Earth, he is adopted by a loving family and becomes the champion of the oppressed, a true hero and a beacon of hope for the city of tomorrow, Metropolis. Sephiroth, in contrast, is the antithesis to all of this. Like Superman, he was known as a hero, but that isn't because of anything actually heroic he did. It was propaganda put out by his employer and creator, the Shinra Electric Power Company. Sephiroth enforces the will of a corporation, the exact opposite of what Superman always tries to do. Like Superman, he also has ties to an alien origin, but not as a refugee. Instead, it's as an invader, through his in utero infusion of Genova cells. This was done by his father, Professor Hojo, so also unlike Superman, his adopted and biological families are anything but loving. Once he learns his origin, he rejects the planet and seeks to enforce his will on it and the cosmos at large. From product to conqueror to self-made god, and through his natural affinity for magic and via materia, and his Genova cells infusion, you have someone who shapes up nicely to be a Superman antagonist. Are you sure that this is enough to justify a matchup? Aren't you just excited about the game? No. We have connections. Both of them have shared actors. Both of them have alien origins. You have Sephiroth serving as a great antithesis to Superman via magic and corporatism, and both names start with an S. And oh come on, man! He has a really cool sword. Let me do this. Fine.
Yay! You're letting me be myself. All right, everybody, let's go.
With all that out of the way, how would Sephiroth fare against Superman? Let's talk about it. Let's start with what Sephiroth brings to the table. His powers include, but are not limited to, elemental manipulation with materia, swordsmanship, spatial cutting with his sword, flight, shape-shifting, illusion creation, telekinesis, telepathy, regeneration, gravity manipulation, force field creation, phasing, death manipulation, teleportation, resurrection, virus creation, avatar creation, and even possible fate manipulation. Now that might seem like an awful lot, but large power sets are pretty common when you're dealing with RPG characters when you actually list out everything that they can do from the games and other sources. Even so, once you take a look at it, it starts to seem a little insurmountable. Honestly, I have zero problem giving the edge in power diversity to my edgy boy Sephiroth here. I think he actually takes this small category.
Ha, you see? I'm already in the lead. Oh, I wouldn't get too cocky about all this. This is just setup. A what? Oh, don't mind me. Meta humor.
Now, I've covered some of Superman's feats. In fact, I did an entire video on how much I think Superman can lift. Spoilers, it's a lot. So instead, I think I'm going to start out with things that Sephiroth has done and what I think his best chances in this fight are, and see how he stacks up to Superman after that. Let's start with the weapon that has become synonymous with the man himself, the Masamune. A sword longer than Epstein's flight logs and about half as dangerous. A sword that is said that only the man himself, Sephiroth, can use.
Huh. Compensating for something?
So the question is, do I think the Masamune could cut the Man of Steel? Yes. There's no reason to bury the lead here. I do think so, and here's why. Superman has a long history of being cut under the right circumstances, especially with swords. And while we don't have a lot of info on the Masamune, here's a small list of reasons why I think it's comparable to things that have cut Superman before. 1. While it's never been stated to be magical itself, I think it having materia slots means it most likely has magical energies associated with the materia. 2. It's not always a normal sword. Sephiroth has been shown being able to conjure it in Advent Children, and even in the games, it just sort of shows up in his hands whenever he needs it. And 3, at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, he demonstrates spatial cutting by cutting into another dimension. Given Sephiroth's proficiency with the sword and its absurd reach, I'd call it a very useful tool in his arsenal if nothing else.
You could say I'm a cut above.
Next up, let's talk about magic. Time and time again, Superman's vulnerability to magic is played up, often cited as one of his main weaknesses. Not only does Sephiroth have materia to draw on, but natural abilities later on, ranging from elements to status effects. He could hit Superman with a lot, find what works and what doesn't. And he'll have to, because Superman has just as many instances of resisting insane levels of magic, powering through magic, especially recently.
Wait a minute. You're weak to magic and resist it all the time? That's stupid. Listen here, you. I've played the compilation, buddy. I don't think you get to criticize storytelling.
This all brings us to what I believe are actually Sephiroth's best tools for this matchup. And just like the Masamune, they have sort of become synonymous with the character. That being Heartless Angel and the spell that takes forever, Supernova. Now, Heartless Angel didn't originate with Sephiroth, it actually started in Final Fantasy VI with Kefka. However, it's sort of become synonymous with Sephiroth at this point, considering how much he uses it and the emphasis they place on it. Heartless Angel is a one-hit attack that reduces anyone's HP to 1. This attack can bypass durability and put someone on the verge of death. It's a very useful tool against someone as durable as Superman. You can sort of think of it as a 1-2 hit finish combo. Next up we have Supernova, and this one can be a little bit contentious. Mostly because this is what a lot of people use to actually scale Sephiroth in the versus battle community. Now, I'm not here to argue this point all day. It's enough for me that the creators say that when summons or Sephiroth unleash these attacks, they're pulling characters into their own space that they have created and maintained, so things that happen in that space actually happen. So what is actually happening here? Well, Sephiroth is pulling somebody into his own space, and then he is using his telekinesis or some form of power to pull a comet into a galaxy, and then into a solar system, and then into a star, in order to blow up the star and create a supernova. Now, I have seen this attack argued to be anywhere from star level to galaxy level. You can use either one of those, really. There's arguments for both. Arguments for the high ends tend to be that Sephiroth is said to be destroying the entire space, and that would be destroying the entire star clusters that are appearing in the cinematics, which is a multi-galaxy at a minimum.
Great Scott. Did Sephiroth do this? Yes, that's what he just said.
And, arguments for the low ends is really just, it's a star blowing up, and a star blowing up in your face is about star level, sometimes solar system level, depending on, what's being depicted in the actual, fiction. Now, this is just the scaling for this attack, and it's not too shabby. Using the more absurd ends of the scaling, and we can get his attack potency to a level where he could contend with some of the absolute low ends of a weakened Superman.
You hear that? Wait a minute. Low ends?
Yeah, this is where I have to spoil some of the fun. While Superman has been knocked out by supernovas, he's also taken the equivalent of 50 supernovas to the face while weakened, and absorbed enough anti-sunlight to destroy half a galaxy. And these are really more on his lower end. I would be being dishonest if I used any of these to talk about where I would place Superman just to make this a fight. Superman has thrown solar systems. He's fought living galaxies, living universes, multiverse destroying monsters, gods that exist beyond normal space-time, and creatures with higher spatial dimensions. This is far and beyond anything that we see in Final Fantasy VII itself. Look, I love me some absurd power scaling as much as the next person, and I've seen some doozies. I've seen people place Sephiroth anywhere from multi-galaxy to multiversal level, mostly using examples of summons and Sephiroth creating and destroying their own spaces, which might be universes. I've also seen people use the crossover that Final Fantasy VII had with tactics, and thus Final Fantasy XII, to argue for multiversal levels of power. But if I make these sort of concessions, then I have to do the same with Superman. And even with all of this, it's still kind of lopsided in my opinion. Now let's move on to speed. We all know Superman's pretty fast. Can Sephiroth keep up though? Speed is another one of those things that's really contentious when talking about Final Fantasy, especially Final Fantasy VII. Because on one hand, you have them, riding around on motorcycles like everyday people, and then you have them dodging lasers. Honestly, that's just one of those things when it comes to versus debating where you're just going to have to accept that the characters can move as fast as they move, and that everything else is for story purposes. On the absolute low end, you have these characters dodging light rays and lightning all the time, and that would put them at sub-relativistic speed, which is, respectable enough. But people way smarter than me have gotten these characters a lot faster than that. There's a very good blog on the Versus Battle Wiki that talks about the Bahamut Fury feat, where Bahamut Fury flies from outside the star system to a planet in a short amount of time, and they've gotten that up to millions of times the speed of light. But if you'd rather stick to Sephiroth himself, you have him being able to track and pull in the comet as well as react to it with his supernova attack, and that's been calced at trillions of times the speed of light. That's, fairly impressive and a lot faster than most people want to give the series credit for. Unfortunately for my man Sephiroth, this is just another area where my main man Superman completely outclasses him. Superman is canonically the 4th fastest character in the DC multiverse, and that puts his speed at an insane level. Even Superman's low ends have him casually traversing star systems, galaxies, and even the DC universe. And the DC universe is infinite in size at its maximum, and if you want to use its lower ends, it's still hundreds of trillions of light years across. More than that though, Superman also consistently moves at infinite speeds, easily breaking the bounds of time by traveling through time, keeping up with characters like Zoom who go at infinite speeds, and just doing things that become unquantifiable. If I use both characters' low ends, Superman takes this, and if I use both characters' high ends, Superman takes this even harder. The only way Sephiroth wins is if I use his high ends and Superman's low ends, and I just can't do that. Personally though, I think the biggest factor here is experience. Look, Sephiroth exists in a world where he is the top dog. Like, 5 people ever warranted his attention. 2 of those he fought casually at once, and despite Genesis's best efforts, it was little more than a game to Sephiroth. Another dude he defeated super casually. The woman he took out in one shot just to keep her from casting a spell. And the last guy takes Sephiroth out 3 separate times because the script said the hero has to win. Superman, his world is just different. There is always a constant crisis, a new threat to rise and overcome. Superman is constantly pit against equals and even greater threats. And he somehow manages to always overcome them. It might be plot convenient, but it doesn't shake out in Sephiroth's favor. Sephiroth, in contrast, is arrogant. Most things he doesn't even perceive as a threat, and when he does, he rarely goes for the kill, the one exception being Aerith's wholly because it undermined his plan. With everything else, he's like a cat playing with his food, often opting to play mind games instead of just killing the good guys. And unfortunately, his mind games just probably won't work on Superman the same way they worked on Cloud. So in terms of things that matter, I personally give the edge to Superman in every category except for power diversity. And even then, there's just really not a lot that Sephiroth has in his arsenal that Superman hasn't faced before or faced in greater measure. If I had to place Sephiroth on a threat scale to Big Blue, it would be mid. He could likely take a low end or a very inexperienced Superman, and he has a toolkit that would allow him to pose a threat to a Kryptonian. However, he lacks the raw stats to tackle where I personally rank Superman, and his ego and machinations would get in the way and probably cause him to try to face Superman alone. So that's the way I see it. But you know, my opinion isn't the only one that's out there. So, if you disagree with me or if you agree with me, you know, hit up the comment section and tell me why. If there's anyone else you would like to see me pit up against Superman, go ahead and leave their names in the comment section and I'll look into it. And while you're there, why don't you go ahead and like and subscribe and all of that other YouTube nonsense. Hopefully everyone out there is enjoying Rebirth and is looking forward to seeing more of both of these characters in the future, because I know I am. Anyway, that's been Daniel with Truth, Justice, and all of that nonsense. I'll catch y'all next time.
Well, you tried your best, but it looks like you have been foiled, you fiend. But don't be glum, old chap. I am sure you'll get me next time. Why are you talking like that? I don't know. It's no matter. Soon you will be subjected to my true power. Meteor? No, my fan base. Ha 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 ha.